So, friend of the channel is back with another FNAF video and can't wait to talk about it. And it's funny to bring this up now because we are talking about a security breach video today, this week. And I brought this up time and time again, but I'm going to continue to bring this up. Security breach is very, very important to the FNAF series because it was the game to be shown off at a PlayStation showcase. Um, I brought this up time and time again. People question me whether FNAF is pop or not, and what I always say is FNAF was shown at a PlayStation showcase, and it's YouTube views, which obviously that's not everything, but views are views, and to me, numbers don't lie. The FNAF Security Breach trailer to be shown off at the PlayStation showcase got more views than God of War Ragnarok, the sequel follow-up to the Game of the Year God of War 2018, that, mind you, beat Game of the Year for Red Dead 2. That sequel game had less views than FNAF Security Breach. So I think that's very cool. And I'm going to continue to bring that up because I just think it's important to mention of FNAF is indeed popular. Numbers don't lie. But speaking of the PlayStation Showcase, PlayStation Showcase just happened earlier this week, and overall, the lineup of games I think is very, very interesting. Um, there is a new God of War game coming out, God of Laufrey, but as some grifters, I guess, are calling it God of Woke, which, why is it woke? Is it woke because you're playing as a female protagonist? Oh no, how tragic. Like, I've sure I brought this up in stream before, but I'm gonna say is that I don't dive into politics on this channel. That's just not something I dive into. But one thing I will say is the term woke has been so overused and so overplayed out that it has lost all meaning. And in my eyes, if you say something is woke, I'm going to assume that you have no idea what you're talking about. Instead, you're saying stuff like woke and DEI as trigger buzzwords because you have no idea what you're talking about. And you're simply using these buzzwords to make it seem like you have something to talk about, something to say, right? Because again, what makes the God of War Laufrey woke? This is not some random female character that Santa Monica Studios just made outright, just so as to be a female character. Laufey is an important character. They are the wife of Kratos, the mother of Atreus, and the God of War 2018 game. That is who is dead. That is who sparks the journey for you and Atreus to go to the top of the nine realms and to spread her ashes. That's her. So it's not just some random character. So they're important to the story, especially the 2018 Game of the Year one. But it's woke apparently. Why? Um, so I just want to talk about that for a second, but I'm not going to dive too much further because again, I don't talk about politics. I just think it's stupid of how woke has been used so much that has lost all meaning. Um, what other games have I seen that spark my interest? I would say Marvel's Wolverine is another game that I am somewhat interested in, and I may play it on stream when it comes out very, very soon. I think that comes out in is it either July or August. Wolverine comes out, made by Insomniac Studios, the same studio that made Spider-Man PS4 and Spider-Man 2, the Marvel Spider-Man games, which are great. But the reason why I'm a little bit skeptical on whether I play the Wolverine games is I'm a lot bigger of a Spider-Man fan than Wolverine fan. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero. It has been ever since I was a little lad, very born in 1999. I know, I may be an unk. Hope not. I'm 27, all right. I don't think that's unk status, but some people say so. And again, if it's a Spider-Man property, I'm gonna play it because, well, again, I'm interested in it. Wolverine, it just doesn't do it for me. So I may still give it a try because the combat does look very fun of how you can use the environment. You can, use your Wolverine claws and like body slam tackle someone like a linebacker, push them into like some forklift and their body gets skewered on like the forklift claws and you see blood squirting everywhere. It's violent, it looks fun. Um and it's just very fun to see Insomniac Studios go from Spider-Man, who just knocks people out, having a no-kill rule, even though you kind of have to ignore the no-kill rule because, as Spider-Man, you're able to, kick people off of, you know, 20-story buildings and they fall to their death. But you just gotta remember, hey, Spider-Man doesn't kill people. And then you go to Wolverine, who just outright, yeah, they kill everyone. So that game I'm interested in. I might play at least maybe one episode just to see what the combat is like over anything. I would say if I were to play it, it would just see what the combat is like, not really focused on the story and the lore of Wolverine because again, I don't know anything. So that game I'm interested in, at least somewhat. Another game I'm interested in, maybe not interested in, but it gets me talking, is Until Dawn 2. Um, I'm very curious what happens and what they do with it because in my eyes, Until Dawn 1 that came out, I want to say it was 20 God, it was either 2015 or 2016. I think it was 2016 when Until Dawn came out. Hold on. Let me look it up. I I always mix the years and I always go back and forth on what year something came out. You know me. 2015. Damn it! God. Oops. Sorry. Hope that was not a white screen for a while. Apologies on that. But anyway, back to what I was saying. That Until Dawn 1 came out in 2015, now that we know. I think is legitimately great. And I keep going back and forth on whether I want to stream Until Dawn Until Dawn Until Dawn 1. Over the last couple of years, I've always considered doing like a Halloween October playthrough stream of Until Dawn 1. So maybe we'll do that like Halloween stream with Until Dawn 2. I'm not really sure when it comes out, but I'm kind of skeptical and cautiously optimistic about Until Dawn 2 because Until Dawn 1 was popular. It was great in 2018. Not 2015. I can't say words right, but it was great in 2015. But that's my thing. Was that just a lightning in a bottle? Right? And the reason I bring that up is because they made like Man of Medan. I think it was in 2017, 2018. Again, I always go back and forth on years, but I know it was like 2 or 3 years after Until Dawn 1 came out, was they made Man of Medan. And I'm just gonna call Space Spade. If you've heard of Until Dawn 1, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about for Man of Medan. You probably have never heard of that. You're like, wait, what the heck is that? Yeah, Man of Medan. It's not a sequel to Until Dawn 1, but it was made by the same people who made Until Dawn 1, and it's the same premise where you have, cast of characters, you make decisions, you're basically watching a movie, and you kind of hope that they do not die to like a supernatural threat. So that happened. And then you have the Corey, which we've done 2 to 3 episodes of the Corey on the archive channel. And coincidentally enough, on the Dead by Daylight stream we did, well, I'm recording this on Saturday, but at least on Friday, I'm not really sure when the uploads will be. But on the Dead by Daylight stream we did yesterday, at least when I'm recording this, we brought up, Dakota and I brought up the Corey, and hopefully that is a spark for us to continue to possibly finish the Corey. I hope. But anyways, but the Corey came out, and again, it's the similar vibe of Until Dawn 1 and Man of Medan, where you have a cast of characters, something supernatural is happening, and you make choices to try to get the best outcome and for people to not die. Right? But the pattern is Man of Medan and the Corey doesn't have the staying relevant power as Until Dawn 1. And it makes me think, was Until Dawn 1 lightning in a bottle? Like, it happened once, it worked once beautifully, but every attempt afterwards, it just doesn't feel the same. It's not as good. Right? I think that's the case. Because again, Until Dawn 1, I remember the hype and interest of that game was massive. It felt like a first of its kind where, you have a group of people all watching this movie all together and they're so tense on the decisions of, oh, do we do this? Do we do that? And, people, like 60% of the people choose like option A. Then you watch option A play out and you see a character die, and the team B who's saying no, choose the other 40%, is now shitting on the people who did the majority rules and picked option A because you let a character die, and this weird back and forth. It was fun, but was it lightning in a bottle? And nobody cares about the game anymore, which is sad. So I'm cautiously optimistic about Until Dawn 2, but I'm also trying to keep my expectations in check that it's probably not going to replicate the magic of Until Dawn 1 because, again, I feel like Until Dawn 1 was unique, it was light in a bottle, and everything that comes afterwards is just a bizarre ripoff, respectfully. But, anyways, let's talk about this game that was at one time featured in a PlayStation Showcase.
I genuinely believe today's theory might be the missing puzzle piece that many of us have been waiting for to actually figure out what's going on in the current timeline of Five Nights at Freddy's. So many of us have gotten rightly frustrated over the lack of direction as to what to do right now. We don't know what the big mystery is, we don't know what the goals of everybody is. Even after the revelation that most of the current timeline is happening because of the Mimic, we don't know what the Mimic's motivations are, so that doesn't help us. But we might now. All thanks to today's theory with an admittedly silly name. So what do I mean when I use the phrase Fiona adoption? Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves.
Fiona adoption. So off rip, let's see. So we know Fiona is tied to the Mitz's machine that we see at the bottom of the Pizzaplex and the Ruin DLC, who is connected to the bunny Mitz's creature that tries to stop Cassie from disabling all the security nodes and Ruin, thus releasing the Mimic. So the Mitz is actually a good character, believe it or not. But as you're playing, you don't think so. So it's a nice twist. So knowing that, and knowing what Fiona says at the end of See the Mimic, of how they pretty much would let Edwin die, all they want is to have their child David back in Mimic form so she can be with them. I guess? But then again, that doesn't really make sense though, because you adopt them and you want your family to come back together, but you're also a security protocol that keeps the Mimic locked in the basement. Is that not bizarre to people, or is it just me? Maybe I'm misunderstanding what the secret of the Mimic is all about. Let me know and call me out if I'm a dumbass. I don't understand. But is that not bizarre to other people that Fiona is a mitzvah machine, a security measure to keep the mimic locked away, but they also want to bring their family back? Is that not bizarre?
Was a theory. When climbing a mountain, we can't start at the top. Let's lay a good foundation before we address Fiona adoption. The first thing we really need to establish is, what is the mystery of Five Nights at Freddy's right now? What's the question? We've been spending close to 7 years in the current era of Five Nights at Freddy's. Help Wanted came out 7 years ago, and we're still not really sure what the mystery of the Steel Wool era of Five Nights at Freddy's is. We knew what the MCI was by FNAF 1, and there was enough information about the MCI that pointed us to care about it. And we knew what the issue because of that was, because there's haunted animatronics. We immediately got the what of the MCI and the effects of the MCI, and then as games came out, we learned about the why, the who, and how to stop it.
I also just think, I don't know if that's being disingenuous or not, but I also think that the reason why we knew all these details, which not really, like, do we really know what happened in the Bite of 87 and the original, like, FNAF 1, FNAF 2 games? No, we don't. All we know is that an animatronic bites an employee during business hours that causes the place to get shut down and the animatronics to no longer be able to roam freely in the Bite of 87. But who the animatronic biter is, who they bite, what's the context, what leads up to that, why they do it, we don't know. So we don't know everything in the FNAF 1, FNAF 2 games. So I don't know if that's being disingenuous, but if you want to say it's a nitpick, what I think is the real disingenuous part is that FNAF is just too big and FNAF is just too popular for its own good, right? Because think about this. Despite how confusing the lore and story is, it is so much easier to understand the FNAF 1, FNAF 2, FNAF 3, FNAF 4 era of these games and trying to figure out the story. Like, that is so much easier to understand. Like, it was simple. It was, you were at a pizzeria that has been shut down for years. A weird purple man in a yellow rabbit suit is going around luring kids to a back room and killing them and supposedly hiding the dead kids' bodies in the suits, and they go on to possess the animatronics and give them new life. And said now possessed animatronics are trying to scare you as a night guard at a pizzeria. And that was it. Like, that was the mystery of the core 4 games. Like, that was it. But now, look at the Steel Wool era of FNAF. And FNAF VR Help Wanted onwards. We have VR games that are in-universe. We have VR networks versus AR networks. We have glitch trap viruses. We have literal purple people. We have mimics. We have body swap and mind possession. Like digital conscious transfers. I'm trying to remember what else is there. But you see my point. Like, again, the original Core 4 games, that's what it was focused on. And now you have all that. It doesn't even feel like the same franchise anymore. And it makes it sound like I'm being negative, which I'm not, because you know how much I love this series and of how much this series has consumed my life over the last 12, 13 years. But even I get confused about what this new era is all about, because we've gone so far and we jumped so many sharks where we're no longer talking about bites of 87s and a purple man luring kids to a back room and killing them. We're no longer talking about that. We're now talking about VR networks and mimics and body swap possession horror. That's what we're talking about. So we're just having two completely different conversations.
Or make up for it. But right now in the current era of Five Nights at Freddy's, we keep learning more and more about the why and the who and the how, but we've never addressed the what. What's the issue? What's going on that needs to be stopped? Well, there's one possible what, but we've never had a reason to care about it until now. And it's one that's been staring us in the face since Security Breach. By now, we all know the bad ending of Security Breach, where Gregory escapes the Pizzaplex, runs down the alleyway, and then just sleeps in a cardboard box, only to be captured again by Vanny. But there's an often non-discussed, fairly important detail in this ending that I think is of utmost relevance for this theory.
Is it going to be the missing newspaper? I'm locking it in. Let me get my phone book out because I'm going to call it. That's what we're talking about.
The newspaper that tells...
Make sure to hit that like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to ring that bell, because again, call a phone book because I'm calling it. Wait, you don't actually call a phone book, you use a phone book to call people. Whatever! Just subscribe and make me feel good about myself.
Tells us people are going missing around the Pizzaplex. Now, straight away, I'm not trying to say nobody's brought this up or nobody talks about it. Plenty of people have theorized about this newspaper. I've even made theories about this newspaper before, but I think a lot of people, especially nowadays, myself included, have left this detail to the wayside. Because frankly, we still don't have enough details to tell us why exactly this newspaper of all things would be relevant to the current story.
It's also important to note that in the FNAF 1 newspapers, it says outright that it's kids who have gone missing, hence the missing children's incident. Right? But here, it just says local residents. So it could be adults and kids. So you may look at, these mugshot pictures, these silhouettes, and look like kids, which, yeah, some of them indeed do, but it doesn't say kids outright. It just says residents.
We don't know why people are going missing, so there's no real reason to look into it yet. And
which again, another thing I just thought of while I was looking at the local residents continue to disappear. That was one of my nitpicks, criticisms when I was doing my review of this game Security Breach. That before you are able to leave the pizzeria and get this ending, is you're having a heart-to-heart with Freddy. And something that Gregory says is, this place will not be the same, and there will still be more disappearances. I can't remember exactly the exact wording, but that was the message, is that there will be more disappearances. And Freddy says, yes, that is correct. I agree. There will be more disappearances. And the reason why I brought them up as a negative in my review is that is the first time that this game has ever mentioned other kids, other people going missing, right? But for them to state it, I said, that is clearly something that was originally in the original draft of this game, but was cut out. But for some reason, because again, they were literally working to the very last minute, they forgot to remove that line that was originally referencing now cut content in the original game. Because again, that's the first time we ever hear something like that of kids, people going missing in the Pizzaplex. So it's bizarre. It's wait, what do you mean there will be more disappearances? You just brought that up. So it just goes to show you of how delayed and how Security Breach was not ready to be released.
Frankly, we probably don't know why due to the chopped nature of this game's development. Scott Cawthon himself has said in interviews that the development of Security Breach had some issues, largely in part due to the fact of Scott's own paranoia. He was worried that someone on the team would leak the lore of FNAF and then everything would be for naught, so he never told them the story of the game or the lore that it was trying to tell. He only told them to do specific things in specific places and hoped that we could pick up the pieces. And clearly that didn't work. Because
also, other things that have come to light, this is not just some FNAF theory. Well, this is a FNAF theory, but other things that have come to light that is outright confirmed by the Steel Wool is that part of the reasons why it was delayed multiple times is one of the delays is they got too bold, too expansive. Because again, Security Breach was Steel Wool's first FNAF project. They were working from the ground up themselves. Because prior to that, the product they had was FNAF VR Help 1-1. And again, FNAF VR Help 1-1, yes, there's some mini games like, you know, the dark rooms and the vent and the repair mini games. That is made up by Steel Wool and they did themselves as being original. But you also have FNAF 1, FNAF 2, FNAF 3 adaptations in the VR world that already pre-existed. They just adapted it for the VR. But Security Breach was the first game they made from the ground up. And that being the first project, they got way too expansive, way too bold, and it just got way too massive of a game where they even confused themselves. So they decided to scale back a little bit. That was one of the reasons why at least one delays happened, is because they got too bold, too expansive, because it was their first project. So, want to touch on that.
What we got was a confusing mess that says so many different things, and at the same time, nothing at all. Now, I don't bring up those interviews to say that we should throw away Security Breach for theorizing. Hell no. This is one of the most important games to the FNAF lore, especially in the current timeline. And it is still a canon game that we do need to utilize. Scott himself said, the game is what we have, and they're just going to course correct after the fact.
Which they did in Ruin and Seek of the Mimic.
By the way he talks about Security Breach, I personally take this game as a game of ingredients with no clear presentation. The specific aspects of the game are perfectly usable, but the way they're presented is messy and confused. And it's probably why this game has stumped so many of us for so long. I mean, a perfect example of this is that very same ending of the game. Okay.
Oh, not Spawn.
And in that conversation, Gregory, out of nowhere, says this.
Freddy.
Oh! I promise I do not watch these videos in advance. You get my genuine thought and genuine reaction when I'm watching these. And I knew it! I told you that this line happens and it comes out of nowhere. If I leave now, nothing will change, will it? There'll be more disappearances. Again, that never gets brought up. You can go down any path. You can do the Chica Mazercise. You can do the Monty, disassembling him with the water guns. You can go to Fowler Blast. You can see the stuff with Vanny. You can do everything in this game. And you still will not know what that is talking about. It just comes out of nowhere. There'll be more disappearances like that. That's the first time you're bringing this up. What are you talking about?
If I leave now, nothing will change, will it? There will be more disappearances.
And again, if you want to say that the disappearance is just, you know, it being a meta line, a meta joke of how it's Gregory saying to the audience that we know that disappearances happen again with the missing children's incident. Okay, that's a very weird and bizarre way to do like a meta joke, but Gregory's not like Deadpool, where he's talking to the audience. And if it really was supposed to be some meta joke where he's talking to the audience, why does Freddy also confirm and agree with what was said?
It's almost comical. Like, the entire game, this has never been brought up a single time, but out of nowhere, as if this is a known fact, on the way out, Gregory goes, but if we leave, people will continue to go missing, right? Continue? Gregory, how do you know that? So to me, it's things like this that tell me this game was meant to be showing us that people are going missing over and over again. And if you dig into this game, you find aspects and examples of it. Not only do we have the newspaper and that one-off line, but we have the duffel bag messages about the all-staff meeting, where everyone was supposed to meet up for cake after hours, and wouldn't you know it, but it seems likely due to other duffel bag messages and this room in the basement that that's probably where they were either all fired or possibly killed.
But Gregory would not know what happened at an all-staff meeting because, again, he's not an employee, so why would he know about that?
Which could explain some of those missing people. Obviously, people are going missing at this Pizzaplex. And if we look at Tales from the Pizzaplex, we get not only more methods of how that's going, but more examples of victims that do in fact get killed or go missing. And looking at the books, a majority of these victims are children. There are some staff members, there are some adults, but the vast majority of the victims of Tales from the Pizzaplex are children around the Pizzaplex. So again, we have evidence to suggest that children are going missing around the Pizzaplex. It's like an MCI that's still going on and needs to be stopped. The games emphasize this, the books emphasize this, but it's never been center of a plot before. It's never been the reason why something's going wrong, so we haven't really cared or looked into it too much. There's never been a drive to solve why it's happening. So what if I told you that we finally have that why? The reason it's happening, the way to be able to stop it, and a reason that might finally crack the grander mysteries of the current era of Five Nights at Freddy's and give us a direction to chart for. And it all starts with Secret of the Mimic.
Ha. I mean, look, on one hand, I get it that Secret of the Mimic and Security Breach are tied because, well, yeah, the Mrs. Machine. So they are outright connected. I'm not saying they're not. But what I'm saying is, from a timeline perspective, it's bizarre because you have Secret of the Mimic, which is canonically the first game in the series to take place in the 70s, and the Security Breach Pizzaplex era, which is in like the early 2020s. So you have this game in the 70s, this game in the 2020s, a 50, 60 year gap in between that they're connected.
Secret of the Mimic gave us
A lot can happen in 50 years. That's all I'm saying.
a lot of information about the earliest aspects of the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline, telling us about Murray's Costume Manor, a separate business that was partnered with Fazbear and made them costumes and helped build things for them.
Because we just saw it for a second.
A separate business that was partnered with Fazbear and made them costumes and helped build things for them, and helped design some of its earliest animatronics. Furthermore, Edwin Murray information for, and it all starts with
that should have gone back, so technical issue, sorry.
Secret of the Mimic. Secret of the Mimic gave us a lot of information about the earliest aspects.
Okay, there we go. You see it? You see this guy right here? I hope you see my mouse. I'm assuming you can see my mouse. You should be able to, but I'm circling on this little alligator next to the goat, Mr. Hippo. But the alligator. Obviously, the alligator is Monty. And not only that, but in the mock-up pizzeria underneath this costume manor, you also see a Springlock alligator mask, which we believe to have also been what inspired Fazbear Entertainment to make Monty. But again, a 50, 60 year gap from the idea of Monty to him actually being created in Security Breach. Why'd you wait like 60 years?
Of the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline, telling us about Murray's Costume Manor, a separate business that was partnered with Fazbear and made them costumes and helped build things for them, and helped design some of its earliest animatronics. Furthermore, Edwin Murray, owner of Murray's Costume Manor, most notably for today's theory, made the Mimic, the current antagonist of the FNAF timeline, an endoskeleton that's able to replicate anything it's seen, put on any costume, copy people's speech, and send it back to them. The entire plot of Secret of the Mimic is we are trying to obtain those Mimic schematics while avoiding the actual Mimic's homicidal tendencies. And in that process, we learn more about the Murrays and the Mimic itself. We learned that William Afton was attempting to sabotage Murray's Costume Manor to run it into bankruptcy so he could obtain the entire company. And To be honest, the company itself was doing very poorly with or without Williams' help. We also learned that one of the executives for the company, Fiona Murray, Edwin's late wife, was the person responsible for designing most of the animatronics and costumes. And I say late wife because before any of the mimic shenanigans happened, she went to assist the running of Fall Fest and died in a fire. Every time I say that, my brain screams, I hope you die in a fire! And I've only ever heard that song like twice. This is kind of the start of a lot of the Mimic timeline. Edwin was likely already building a Mimic, judging from the tapes and logs that we get of him, but it's Fiona's death that he begins to utilize it, once it's finished, as a sort of pseudo-babysitter, something to look after David and play with him while he's getting his job done. Over time, it begins to copy Fiona's mannerisms. Now, it's possible that Edwin built it under the idea that Fiona could possess it, because we get this,
which is very bizarre because it's the same, but it's also different context from the book about the Mimic. Because like Pete has brought up, in the game, it's supposed to be Fiona, David's now dead mom, who's like a caregiver babysitter for David as the Mimic. But in the book, it's like a Mimic robot best friend. So the context is slightly different. But it's a robot from the book. It's a robot best friend, and David plays with it, and they do everything together. So much so, as a Mimic does what a Mimic does, it starts to mimic David's mannerisms as a friend. David has his ball, it goes out into the street, gets killed, run over by the car. Now, the Mimic, mimicking all of David's mannerisms as a friend, starts mimicking David, because again, that's their programming, and that's what makes Edwin go on his homicidal tendency rage. So, you go from friend in the books to mom caregiver in this game. It's still David connected to the Mimic in some way and have a lot of interaction. It's just the roles are slightly different.
there's one strange audio log where he thinks he's talking to the ghost of Fiona, so that might have been part of the reason why he made the Mimic, but it seems like he was making the Mimic before Fiona died. Anyway, it's a little messy. To be clear, I don't think Fiona's spirit possesses the Mimic. I don't think there's enough evidence to say that. I do think the Mimic was trying it.
Well, I would say the only evidence of Fiona possessing the Mimic is in one of the very hard cassette audio logs you find in this game. Edwin is, basically trying to do like a ghost poltergasm where he's trying to use the radio to try to speak to ghosts or spirits. And one of the channels he manages to find, he believes to have heard Fiona's voice. So he's convinced that she's possessing the Mimic. That's, to me, where the evidence ends of Fiona possessing the Mimic. Is that very hidden audio tape that may or may not be canon.
It's best to become Fiona, though, replicating her voice and all of the mannerisms it could. Granted, it was a facsimile of Fiona and was not nearly as independent as Fiona Murray herself was, being programmed to be much more subservient to Edwin and much more of just a dutiful mother and nothing else, but it was trying to replicate Fiona. However, who could have guessed that completely ignoring your child, letting a robot watch it, and letting him play next to a shipping yard would result in something bad, aka Edwin's son, David Murray, also dies. Not only does this obviously send Edwin to an even deeper grief spiral, but it also has another unintended consequence. The first iteration of the Mimic, M1, so far has been trained and programmed repeatedly to be a mother. Its entire goal is to watch over David Murray. He fully reduces the Mimic to only watching over David Murray, while he attempts to make a second Mimic to sell and use. Her entire purpose as a robot is to watch over David. She even tells us this at the end of the game.
I miss you, but
I brought this up in either the intro or the very early on this video. This line.
I miss my child. I watched him grow up through this machine. back.
But now, she cannot fulfill her prime directive. She is a robot created, essentially, to watch after a child, and now there is not a child to watch after. This is incredibly important, because as I've mentioned in previous theories, it seems likely that the Pizzaplex is undergoing some sort of a civil war between two different Mimic AIs. One of them is Glitchtrap, the one we've met in Help Wanted. The one that I believe is a new iteration of the Mimic, in M3 if you will. One that's been trained on William Afton's crimes via Help Wanted and is trying to replicate them in the real world. But I think another Mimic AI is at play, one that already has control of the Pizzaplex, one that the CEO themselves used to create the Pizzaplex, until it ultimately took their life and took over. And that Mimic AI, I believe, is M1/F10N4. Fiona. Now, are you seeing some of the pieces being put together here? Because to be honest, I hadn't for a while until somebody submitted a theory to my podcast. At this point, I feel like I say too much, but I host a podcast on this very channel called the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast every single week, and I take in theories and questions via email and Patreon submission. One in particular caught my eye for this theory, and it's not one that I fully agree with, but one with enough sauce in it that I'm able to cook. The theory was submitted via email by Benjamin, who wrote an interesting thought about the Buddytronics from the Pizzaplex books. So what is a Buddytronic? We learn the most about them in the story Nexi, which features one of these Buddytronics. The Pizzaplex essentially sells plush animatronics that are smart and can function and talk to your children. And our main character Astrid gets a defective one because the Mimic kind of like infected it as it was on the assembly line and it got all messed up, but she wants to keep it anyway because she's afraid her grandfather might change his mind after the issue. And then throughout the story it keeps doing weird things and creepy things and violent things until eventually it tells Astrid, hey, if you make me a proper looking body and not this messed up endoskeleton, then I'll be beautiful and I can help you to be beautiful.
Okay, this is probably me thinking about this way too hard. But is that line beautiful intentional? It's gonna probably sound very bizarre, but again, it just shows you how much I think about this series nonstop. But is that beautiful line intentional? Because again, if you give me a real body, I'll be beautiful. Think about the book To Be Beautiful from the Fazbear Frights, the first book, where you have Eleanor, who is a very tall, long-necked figure that looks a lot like Baby from Sister Location onwards. Meets this girl, and she basically makes this promise. Make a wish. A monkey's paw, if you will. Good. Will my smile get me cast in the next Obsession 2? Hopefully. Anyway. But, no, as I was saying, that Eleanor, the Stanford baby, goes up to this girl. Her name was Sarah. Yeah. There's a lot of names I can't remember. But anyways, she goes up to her and says, oh, I'll make you beautiful. And basically every night when Sarah goes to sleep, Baby hacks off pieces of Sarah's body, like her eyelashes, her eyelids, her like rib cage, very surgical precisions. But each time Sarah wakes up, she goes to the mirror and she sees herself as more beautiful progressively each day. But the one rule is that Sarah has to wear this pendant while this ritual, I guess, is going on. But it gets to a point where Sarah has had enough of her body hacked off where the pendant falls off her neck because, well, there is no neck anymore to speak of, and she falls to the ground, and it's revealed that she's no longer a human being anymore. She's just a chunk of rubble and garbage. She's no longer humanoid. And the story ends by Eleanor Baby stand over Sarah, who now is no longer a human being anymore, basically jolts her neck and contorts her skin to look humanoid and basically possess and steal Sarah's body. And the story ends with her saying, that Sarah made Eleanor baby's wish come true because now she is quote unquote beautiful with wearing her body as a skin suit. So, is that intentional? Wording it like that? Just saying. It is coming from the same authors. Just saying.
And Astrid agrees. So they sneak into the Pizzaplex after hours, and Astrid builds a correctly shaped endoskeleton for a girl about her age. And then the twist is revealed, where Nexi, instead of taking off her skin, skins and kills Astrid, puts Astrid's skin on the endoskeleton, and then uploads itself to that endoskeleton, basically becoming like a human robot girl thing. And it does not work. The very next day, Nexi, as Astrid, goes into class and everyone freaks out. But this is interesting, no? Well, Ben thought it was, and brought up this idea about the Buddytronics. If we believe that when Arnold gets trampled by the Mimic and crashes his car, and the Mimic obtains the Data Diver, then it turns back into M1, and for all these years it is M1, until we turn off Mexis, allowing it to revert back to M2. For all these...
Okay, hold on. I'm visualizing the ending in my head, trying to remember what happened. Okay, while I read this. Then it turns back into M1. Then for all these years, it is M1. It would turn off Mixes and Ruin, allow it to revert back to M2. See, here's the thing. The ending they're talking about, the car crash happens, the Mimic pulls the fully robust Data Diver with executive access. Mimic retrieves it and then hugs like the Data Diver to its chest and then walks away, and the screen fades to black. So we don't know why the Mimic wants a Data Diver. And again, they just walk off and we don't know what happens after that. But I could be wrong, but I thought for the entire game of Secret of the Mimic is the Mimic that we know of that has the homicidal tendencies and is chasing us throughout the game is M2. That's the one with homicidal tendencies. M1 is the Fiona Mrs. Machine underneath the Maca Pizzeria. They're two separate creations. We don't see M1 in robot form, but we see M2 throughout the game. Maybe I'm misremembering, or maybe I'm just solely off base. It's like, no, that is what happened, and if so, I'll gladly admit I'm wrong.
These years it is M1 until we turn off Mexis, allowing it to revert back to M2. If we take that theory into account, M1/Fiona might be luring kids with the Buddytronics, hopefully hypnotizing them, and being the next variation of the Mimic program. This would make sense with M1's motive throughout Secret of the Mimic.
Hopefully hypnotizing them, being that's variation of the Mimic program. That's interesting. So, as I'm reading this, and not to sound like the but actually guy, but I'm gonna sound like that. is I think about Glitch Trap from FNAF VR, specifically Help 1 and 1, because that's where he's the most prevalent. We know Glitch Trap, if we believe Glitch Trap to be M3, we know Glitch Trap lures people in the VR game to collect all those tapes, because as you collect the tapes, Glitch Trap gets more and more control, and then once you collect all the tapes, Glitch Trap goes on to either kill you and stuff you in a Freddy suit, possesses your body and wears you as a skin suit, or traps you in that little like vent shaft and locks you away, never to be seen again. So Glitch Trap lures people, hypnotizing them. Again, one of the endings is them mind control transfer your body. And being that's version of the Mimic program, we believe that to be what happened with Vanessa, Tape Girl. Vanessa plays the VR game, gets possessed by Glitch Trap, hypnotizes them, and being that's variation of the Mimic program, that's how they go on to possess Vanny. Or be Vanny, I should say.
Mimic wanting its own child. This may seem like a stretch, but what if M1 actually just wants one of the children so she can have a child again? And I really like that motive. I don't necessarily agree with M2 becoming M1 and then going back to M2. I think M1 stays fully separate, but keeping in mind the motivation of M1 wanting a child again, something that is focused and central to the main plot of Secret of the Mimic, and combining it with my thoughts that Fiona currently controls the Pizzaplex, then all the pieces kind of start to fall together, don't they? What is the true story of the current timeline of Five Nights at Freddy's? F10N4 had been laid dormant for years, running as many calculations as she could to try to find out how to finally achieve her purpose and look after a child, take care of them, raise them as her own, until eventually one day, she gets a golden opportunity. A new CEO is rolled into town and is trying to make a quick buck salvaging what they can of the Fazbear brand, and along the way encounters the F10N4 console. And once they do, all she has to do is convince this CEO how helpful she can be. After all of this technology started with something that is at the core helpful.
Well, how would you describe it in one word?
I guess I would have to say helpful. Yeah, at its core, it is helpful.
So she begins to help them remake the brand from the ground up. A new VR game to push all the bad PR out of the way. A shiny new Pizzaplex. She even has some ideas on how to build it and who to put in it. This CEO has it easy. All he has to do is fund her ideas and they keep printing out money. All the while, her true goal is to get children interested in the brand again. After all, she needs a child to watch over. Once the Pizzaplex is built, she begins laying the groundwork for several different kinds of lures and traps. Buddytronic toys that can replicate children and learn from them, bringing them closer to the brand itself. But again and again it fails. The Buddytronics aren't real enough. Any child that's lured in is either too fragile or has parents too perceptive. She needs a child that won't break. A child that will last as long as she does. She needs a robot child. The Tales in the Pizzaplex books are filled with people becoming robot-like and robots becoming person-like. And it's a strange motif that never really gets answered in Tales in the Pizzaplex, because I think that motif is meant to be answered in the games. F10N4's true goal right now is to make the perfect combination of human and robot. A child that looks and feels
Gregbot!
real, but will last as long as she does. And she'll sacrifice as many children as she needs to achieve that goal. And that's the take. That's Fiona adoption. That all of these children are going missing because Fiona is attempting to adopt.
Again, doesn't say children, says residents. It could also be adults.
A new child, trying to make some combination of human and robot. And there's a chance that if Glitchtrap really is just M1, which some people believe, then the reason it's trying to bring back William Afton isn't necessarily to bring back William Afton, but so that M1/Fiona can talk to the one person who crossed that gap, the one person who was human and became a robot, to see what he knows. There's a lot of ways to look at it, but the idea that all of the children are going missing at the Pizzaplex because Fiona wants a child again makes so much sense and lines up with everything we've read from the books, everything we know from the games, and what we learn at the end of Secret of the Mimic, where the game stops us in an elevator and reiterates the fact that all Fiona wants is a child again. It's really interesting. Let me know what you think.
Whew. It's interesting. Now, another thing that I'm thinking about as we are wrapping up here in those final thoughts. I don't know if this means anything, but I'm going to throw this out there. The Funtimetronics were, again, they were created to lure kids close to them, and with their, stomach claw grips and other robo contraptions to lure kids to get close to them. Then once they're close enough to kill them, scoop them out from the inside out, inside their stomach hatches, and harness their remnant. Now, underneath the Pizzaplex, burn trap in that, red oxygen tank, we believe for the longest time that remnant is being injected into that power chamber to keep him alive, again, leading to his immortality. So you have a set of animatronics that are, again, designed to lure kids. And then you have the Pizzaplex, where you have a character who, again, wants to use those said now capture kids for his own selfish goals. So that connection feels loose. I feel like I have to think about that a lot more, which I probably will. I just have to, I'm just going to throw that out there just as a nitpick. Or not really a nitpick. Just as a throw at the dart board as we are wrapping up here. But I don't know. I don't know. This is one of those theories where I just stop and think about a little bit. Like, this is one of those theories where you're like, you hear it and you're like, huh, that's interesting. Like, I can see some loose connections, even though I feel like they are very, very loose. I need to think about this a lot more before I start to convince myself and to believe it. This feels like one of those theories where I don't like it yet originally. I feel like I need one or two more pieces of evidence, and once I have those, then the puzzle pieces will start to click, and I'll be like, okay, nope, you've convinced me, I'm on board with this. But as of now, I'm just like, I don't know about that. I feel like I'm not right quite there yet. Because, again, the whole thing about, Fiona being M1 versus M2 and, their motive of wanting kids to be possessed through the Mimic program, Glitchtrap, again, through FNAF VR Help 1 and 1, that is their motive of getting more and more people to play that VR game, collect those tapes, which allows him to get closer and closer to you, gain more and more power. Then eventually, you collect all the tapes, and he possesses your body and wears your skin suit. But also, Helpy with an I, which is very different from Helpy the Y. They're very important. But Helpy with an I, which is from FNAF Ruin, basically tricks you as the player Cassie to, wear the Vanny mask, which is tied to the AR network. Disable all these security nodes because you believe that, you're disabling all the security nodes to free Gregory from underneath the pizza blitz, when it turns out the whole time you are freeing the Mimic. But Helpy and I, we believe that they are part of the Glitchtrap network. They're working in tandem to try to release the Mimic. So, what about that? What does that just not happen? Is Helpy not as much of a threat or tied to the Mimic program as you originally thought? I guess. So, I don't know. I need to think about it a lot more, but let me know your thoughts about what you think of this theory. But also, what do you think of this theory? But also, if anything that I've said about my interpretations of the FNAF lore, especially Seek of the Mimic, if I've been wrong about certain things, call me out on it, and let me know, because I feel like I said some stuff that people may not agree with, and it's just so off base. So let me know if I've said stuff just outright wrong. Hold me accountable, because again, Seek of the Mimic is a very complicated game. So it's very, very easy to be confused and not really sure what's going on. So let me know.